Welcome back to Mean Streets, where each week we investigate the best, worst, and forgotten movies of film noir. I'm Luke Deckard.
And I'm Matthew Booth.
And today's case is 1955's Kiss Me Deadly, starring Ralph Meeker, Albert Dekker, and Paul Stewart. Directed by Robert Aldrich and written by A.I. Bezzerides. The logline for Kiss Me Deadly is a doomed female hitchhiker pulls Mike Hammer into a deadly whirlpool of intrigue revolving around a mysterious great what's-it. This is our first proper review of 2025. 2025. Kiss Me Deadly. But we thought it'd be a good time just to remind everyone to find, we have a bunch of social media platforms that we're hanging out on, and we figure you should all follow us there and chat with us, listen to episode, find us online, talk to us about it there. So we're on Blue Sky, we're on Threads, we're on Twitter /X. All, if you just look for Mean Streets, the Film Noir podcast, we will come. We also have a Facebook group. It's a members only Facebook group, so you can also go and request to join that and hang out with us there. Come hang out with us on our social channels if you haven't done that yet, and also if you haven't subscribed to our show and liked it and left reviews, we would be super appreciative if you did that as well. It helps us out. It helps the podcast grow, gets it in front of more people. And, given that there are so few film noir podcasts, let's make this stuff happen. So, Matt,
Kiss Me
Deadly, man.
What a cracking film to start the new year with.
I cannot tell whether I like this film or I hate this film.
Interesting.
That is where I'm at.
It's left you bamboozled.
There are moments in this movie that I thought were fantastic, and then there are moments that I wanted to throw the remote controller at the screen. Characters I loved and characters I hated. Acting I liked, acting I hated. I am very confused by this film. Very, very confused. But we will get into it. What's your kind of initial impression of Kiss Me Deadly?
Well, I remember watching this when I was, late teens, early 20s, on TV, and thinking, my experience and my knowledge of Mike Hammer who's the private eye in this film, until this film, was Stacy Keach in the 80s TV series.
Right.
And I was thinking, because I'd not read any of the books at this point, and I watched this thinking, well, this isn't Stacy Keach. And I remember thinking, this is one gloomy film. And then we'll get into it later on. But then the end credits rolled, and I thought, wow, that is something else. And I know what you mean about the feeling of throwing the remote control through the TV, because if you remember, I said something similar about Sugar. For similar reasons, I think. I can understand your reaction to that. But having said that, I think it's an oddly satisfying ending for me. And I think the whole film is oddly satisfying. And I say oddly satisfying because this is noir to its core. And it doesn't...
Is it?
I think it
is.
Is it? I think it is. And I think it's absolutely... It's one of the bleakest films I've seen. But you're right. There's things to admire and things to just scratch your head about. But Aldrich has made some films that I'm a big fan of. So I'm sort of a bit protective of him, some of his works, because some of his stuff is really good. And this is a recognised classic. We're talking about a recognised classic here. That's not to say that we have to pander to it, but we are talking about a highly...
The Third Man is a recognised classic, and I hated that as well.
Which one, sorry?
The Third Man is a recognised classic, and I hated that
and Touch of Evil.
And Touch of Evil.
There's a lot to unravel in this investigation. What do you want to talk about first?
There is. I mean, the film was a success. I mean, the budget was $410,000. Made in the U.S. and Canada made 726, and its foreign box office was 226. So, in terms of its money, its appeal, this was a big movie. This was a big summer. I don't know if it was. Yeah, it was a big May summer movie. I mean, this was what Jaws before Jaws made summer blockbusters a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a success, no doubt about that.
Yeah, so it's and Mike Hammer, his books are massive at this time. Like, I get it. This is like, I mean, this isn't quite an exaggeration, really. This is kind of like a Harry Potter movie coming out. He is, Micky Spillane is so big at this time that it doesn't surprise me that this movie was a financial success.
Of the sort of top 10 bestsellers of the last few years surrounding this film, Micky Spillane, who's the author of the Mike Hammer novels, I think he was responsible for 6 or 7 of them. That's how popular he was. That's how much of a bestseller he was. And I think there's a case to say he was in the right place at the right time for that, which we'll perhaps get onto when we talk about Hammer himself.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're right. I mean, trying to get a scope of how big this film was and how big Micky Spillane was, Harry Potter's not a bad reference point.
Yeah, I mean, they're both massive, huge properties at this time. But we might as well go behind the camera and talk about the making of it, because there's a lot of interesting details about the making of it, just as there are about the viewing experience of it. So, Matt, tell us a little bit about the director.
Well, Robert Aldrich was a very prolific film and TV director. He made films across a lot of different genres. He came from significant wealth. So his father was the publisher of The Times of Pawtucket. Apologies if I don't pronounce that correctly. And he was a major sort of Republican political influencer. Aldrich comes from this massive line and lineage of American influence and cash.
Old money.
Yeah. There's a quote. I'm not been able to find out who says it necessarily, but there's a quote that says, "No American film director was born as wealthy as Aldrich, and then so thoroughly cut off from the family money," because he turns his back on it to go make movies. And what movies he makes? He's at RKO for a very long time as a production clerk. He sort of works his way up through the studio system. He's at RKO for 2 years, moves on to be second assistant, then first assistant directors. But I think he really starts to make a mark when he moves into feature films. And some of the feature films that we can name, Apache, Vera Cruz, Kiss Me Deadly, Sodom and Gomorrah. One of my absolute favourites, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Worlds away from Baby Jane and Kiss Me Deadly. He does a dirty dozen. So there's all this sort of subversive stuff going on in Aldrich's work, which is why I think he's good choice to direct this film and this adaptation, which he was involved with. He co-wrote the script with a man whose name I'm going to attempt to pronounce. A man called Bezzerides. AI Bezzerides.
That's why I pronounce it, Bezzerides. Yeah.
I was going to say, could you do better than that?
No, AI Bezzerides. He sounds
AI
like
Bezzerides.
He sounds like AI.
Yeah. But and then famously, he hated the book, so he sort of does what he wants with it. But we'll perhaps come on to that later. But yeah, Aldrich has got this sense of the sort of, well, he's got a grip on all sorts of genres. But when he turns his hand to this, and turns his mind to this sort of film, I think he's got a really good handle on it, and he's got a really clear view of what he wants, and a particular style of filmmaking that lets you fill in a lot of blanks. There's a lot of cutaways. There's a lot of sort of feet walking, and then it cuts away and there's a scream, and then you see a body collapse to the floor or things like that. You don't. He lets you fill in what's happening behind the camera, as it were, by giving you just enough information to make that leap. I think he's an interesting director, and I think this is one of his most interesting films.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There are a lot of cool in terms of this film being in the hands of a competent director. I felt that I didn't watch this movie and feel that this was being handled by a bad director. I quite the opposite. I think there were lots of really interesting choices that were done. I mean, the opening scene is a cracking opening scene. With the girl running down the streets and getting picked up by Mike Hammer, and while the credits roll in a Star Wars like scroll fashion, of like an old serial kind of thing, you have
backwards.
That panting. Yeah, you have like that panting going on. So and the panting is almost erotic. It almost sounds like a woman having sex.
Yeah, it's strangely orgasmic, isn't it?
Yes, and so I do really. There are, like I said, earlier I was kind of lamenting how much I didn't like this, but there are really interesting directorial choices that I thought were very cool thing, and like you said, a lot of the not showing things, letting you fill in the blanks. For example, like when the Hammer and the woman are kidnapped and you just hear screams, it's quite horrific. You don't know what's going on, but like you fill in that gap because almost in a Jaws like fashion, less is more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and he's bound by the he's bound, of course, by the time that he's making this.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I mean there were times where I think they were submitting the script and the studio were saying, "Nuh-uh, this is too violent, to this, to that, you can't do it."
Yeah, they were. They sent it back saying, this will never get passed. You're not going to be able to do this.
Yeah,
and he found ways around it. I mean, famously, that's that scene you're talking about where they're touching the girl and Hammer's unconscious on the bed. That's an example of a way that he has to find a way around it, which, of course, is what filmmakers had to do. At one point in time.
Yes,
because they weren't allowed to do half of what we're able to do now.
And I think there also seem to be problems around his interpretation of Mike Hammer, because he is so violent. If you've never read any of the Mike Hammer books, he's a very violent, very bloodthirsty. He's a maniac, in my opinion. I've never really liked Mike Hammer as a literary character. I struggle to see him as a hero. I think he's a bit Rorschach. He's a bit Jack Reacher. He's a character that sort of you could trace to these particular types of noir-esque individuals today.
Rorschach is a great comparison. That's exactly what Mike Hammer is in the books. He's not out to solve the mystery for any reason other than, very often. I mean, I don't necessarily say always, but private revenge. He very often is out for because someone's killed one of his mates or someone's done something unpleasant to someone that he knows. And he kills people with abandon and feels good about it.
He does. And so basically I saw where Aldrich had to sort of argue his position for Hammer. And I found this interesting quote where he said he had to demonstrate that, quote, justice is not to be found in a self-appointed one-man vigilante. Which I quite liked. He's basically saying that he doesn't like Mike Hammer. Though it's interesting that he's doing a Mike Hammer adaptation while he doesn't like the character, but he doesn't seem to like Spillane either. He calls the character Hammer a cynical fascist, and then says Spillane is an anti-democratic figure. So he really doesn't like either of these people, which begs the question of why is he adapting this book?
Why do
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. Because it's hard enough to do these things, isn't it, when you really do like the characters? So to do it when you can't stand them, and he clearly doesn't like them because Spillane and Hammer's politics are obviously the opposite to Aldrich's, and for that matter, Bezzerides. But it's odd, and I don't know why. Because as far as I've been able to ascertain, it's Aldrich who says he'll produce and direct 2 Spillane adaptation.
Yeah.
Why?
This and My Gun is Quick. My Gun is Quick.
Unless it is to, I don't know, to in some way present Hammer as he sees him. to warn people off him. I mean, he's not a likable man, is he? In the books or in this film?
No. It's possible. It's possible. It's weird. It's a very cynical movie. And it's cynical not just in its like in its material. It's cynical in the way the director is approaching the material and what the director is saying about the material. It's and again, this is kind of why I think I like bits of it, but I hate bits of it, because I'm getting this vibe that he just doesn't like. Well, he doesn't like this character. He doesn't like the author, and as a result, he's just going after it. He's just sort of it's a full-on assault on the. It's like if someone were to ask me to like write an adaptation of an author's book that I don't like, some like celebrity author. Oh, write an adaptation. Yeah. It would be this nastiest, cynicalist pile of garbage I can imagine, because I'd be like, I hate this. This is ridiculous. I'm going to make fun of and make this the worst thing ever. And I feel like that's kind of what he was doing here.
Well, and that's what I was saying. Really, you put that more eloquently than I did. I think that's what he's doing. I think he's saying, well, this is an opportunity for me to, kick it in the pants and really tear it to pieces, and to express my disdain on my own terms.
Yeah.
And if that's what he was aiming for, then I can't think of another reason why he would make the film and want to make two films.
I don't know.
Other than that, it's certainly a logical, if that's the right word, reason to do it. It does make sense for him to do it if that's what he was aiming to achieve. And if that is what he was aiming to achieve, I think he does. Achieve it.
I mean, A+, 5 Falcons.
Yeah. If that was the intention, then you have succeeded, my friend, Mr. Aldrich.
So maybe you know this, because I'm at the moment I'm not quite sure. So with Aldrich's politics, when he left his family, because they were quite very, very, they're very conservative individuals and things like that, and he left that camp. Did he move towards the left? Did he go left in politics? Is that what happened?
Yeah, he essentially does do that. Yeah, he goes towards the left, and when the whole McCarthyism thing starts, surprise. If you look into that, surprise is expressed that there was never a file on Aldrich.
Yeah, so that's what's interesting, because you were saying that his politics are so different to Spillane, and Spillane is a right-winged individual. His books are very, very much, Hammer is looking for blood, and he's looking to snuff out and kill communists, hiding in shadows.
There's a famous quote from one of the Hammer books. I can't remember which one it is, but he shoots a load of men. He kills like 10 men through the course of the book. And at the end of it, because these are all written in the first person, he says something along the lines of,
I've got the quote if you want me to read it.
Go on, then. Yeah, go on.
I've got it here, because it's from One Lonely Night.
This is essentially, this is Hammer and Spillane summed up, I think.
Yes, it's from One Lonely Night, and the quote is, "I killed more people tonight than I have fingers on my hands. I shot them in cold blood and enjoyed every minute of it. They were commies."
There you go. So
fade to black.
So what a way to end the book. So, and I've got a quote here from Aldrich. Is just before the Hollywood blacklists start kicking in. I think anybody with any brains in 1936 to 1940 would have been a communist. They were the brightest, they were the quickest, they were the best. And you found working with people of that persuasion more stimulating and more exciting. So you can't really, I don't think, find two artists who are that polar opposite of each other.
Yeah. It's a weird one. It is a bizarre pick for both screenwriter and director to adapt this.
No, I don't know very much about the screenwriter.
Let's move into it then. Let's talk about AI Bezzerides or Bezzerides or however he pronounces his name.
I think his friends call him Buzz. Should we just call him Buzz?
Yeah, we can call him Buzz. Call him Buzz. So the screenplay is said to be it's loosely adapted. Basically, the screenwriter was looking at the book, and he said he made no effort to follow the book's convoluted plot, in his words. Though both are structured around a search for a mysterious box, so that's kind of two things that are happening. One in the book, one in the film. It's looking for a mysterious box, but it's very, very different in what happens in the film. He departs drastically. Both Aldrich and Buzz depart drastically with what Hammer or what Spillane had done in the books. In the film, they have this thing where he never carries a gun. His PI license is revoked, and his gun permit is taken away. And he at no point in the rest of the film actually carries a gun. He does have his gun throughout the book. So it's interesting that the script decides to, in a way, emasculate Hammer. He's not
that was the
allowed
very
to
word
have.
I was going to use.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting choice. So the other thing is in the book the storyline basically focuses on a mafia conspiracy. That's the main center, and there's a mysterious suitcase connected to it as the MacGuffin. During one of the rewrites, when they sent the script back, when the studio said no, you can't, this is not going to fly, they then ejected the mafia stuff and then injected a whole bunch of espionage aspects to this, which I found very interesting. So this in many ways, this film feels like almost like a spy. There's a spy movie element to it. A sort of futuristic element to it. I mean, when we're in like Hammer's apartment, he has this answering machine built into the wall that just reeks of like Man from U.N.C.L.E. or early James Bond or Get Smart. It just looks a bit silly and feels a bit hyper. Maybe that was around the time. I don't know, but it just felt futuristic.
Well, I think they were around at the time, but they weren't the sort of things that a down at heel private eye who works only divorce cases, another change from the books, would be able to afford.
Yes.
So I don't know if there's some sort of comment being made here by Aldrich, which is that in this film, time doesn't mean anything. Because there's a lot of stuff like that, isn't there? There's a lot of juxtaposition between what you think you're watching and what is going on in the background, sort of thing. There's a lot of all that, the credits rolling backwards, for example. I mean, that's a stylistic choice.
Yes. Yeah.
So what is he trying to say with that? What's and why would a private eye have an answering machine in his apartment that's huge? The thing's massive. That he can't, when we know that he won't be able to afford it. Why is his secretary got a dance studio in one room of her apartment? It's just this sort of odd thing that sort of time and money don't seem to matter. Just accept it for what it is. It's very odd. But anyway, I've interrupted.
Yeah. No, it is. It is bizarre. It's again, it's like, I don't know what you're trying to say about Spillane. I don't know what you're trying to say about Mike Hammer. I don't know what you're trying to say about this world, other than everything is just vapid. It's because I mean, even the character of Hammer, the way he's portrayed in this is he's very narcissistic. He's bullying. He's an a-hole. Like, he's sleazy the whole time. There's nothing redeeming about this guy. Well, and he's mostly nothing redeeming. He's like 99% a piece of crap, with a couple of bits that I thought were interesting choices in the script that made him just a sliver likable. It's like, oh, okay, this bit's kind of interesting, but they never develop. We'll get into a bit later, but into that bit,
yeah. But he is unpleasant.
Weird,
he is unpleasant, and he's stupid.
He's very dumb.
He's dumb, but there's a great bit. Well, it's a scene I really like where the cop is saying to him, "I'm going to say some words to you. Just try to understand them. This is a bunch of letters in order, and you have to try and understand them." And then it cuts to Hammer's face, and he looks like a simple school kid.
Yes,
being patronized by a teacher.
Yes.
And again, that's a deliberate choice to make to deliver the line in that way and to have that reaction shot to say Mike Hammer is thick. An odd thing to say about your sleuth.
Your hero, your protagonist, he
was the one who's meant to be solving the crime. It's very odd to say he's
the guy you want to succeed is a dummy. Okay, interesting.
But I mean, Hammer in the books is unlikable, isn't he? Hammer is largely unlikable.
He's aggressive and violent.
Unsympathetic, perhaps, is a better.
Yeah, I've read them, and I don't. This adaptation makes him even more unlikable. I would say he's very similar to maybe like Jack Reacher today, who is very one-dimensional. People tend to sort of get behind the unstoppable force that is Jack Reacher or is Mike Hammer kind of thing. But the other thing that was interesting about this script is, as I was watching, there's all this interesting stuff happening, but then there were things that are being thrown in, and I just kept thinking, like, what is going on? Like, at one point, Mike Hammer meets this woman named Friday. They're chasing each other in the car. Then they pull up at each other. Then they start making out, and then but nothing comes of it. And she's like a nympho, but you're like, why? Like, what is anything gonna happen with this? And then like, no. And then there was these interesting bits with like poetry that connected to the girl Mike Hammer first meets at the beginning, who then goes missing and is dead. And you're like, okay, is that going to come of anything? But then I found this really, really telling quote from the screenwriter, and he says, "People ask me about the hidden meanings in the script, about the A-bomb, about McCarthyism. What does the poetry mean, and so on? And I can only say that I didn't think about it when I wrote it." I was having fun with it. I wanted to make every scene, every character interesting. A girl comes up to Ralph Meeker, who plays Mike Hammer. I make her a nympho. She grabs him and kisses him, and for the first time she sees him, she says, "You don't taste like anybody I know. I'm a big car nut, so I put in all this stuff with the cars and the mechanic. I was an engineer, and I gave the detective the first phone answering machine in that picture. I was having fun."
And he was having fun because he hated the book.
Yes, because there's another quote of him saying, "I wrote it fast because I had contempt for it."
Yeah.
He says, "I tell you, Spillane." Yeah, he says, "I tell you, Spillane didn't like what I did with his book." Not surprised. He said, "I ran into him at a restaurant, and boy, he didn't like me." And this is where I'm. There's interesting things coming from the director. The way it's shot, the way things are happening, the way they're progressing and stuff. But then there's these things with the writing that I'm like, what is going on and why? Yeah. And clearly, Aldrich hated the book and hated the character and hated the author. Buzz hated the book, hated the character, and it does come out in the script. You feel it. You feel it. We've been talking about it already, but like, yeah, I mean, just how stupid is Mike Hammer? I mean, my notes in it towards the end of the movie, when you realize that he has effed up the entire investigation that the police are trying to solve, I'm like, wow. My notes are literally, this guy is stupid. Like, he's messed up everything, and he doesn't redeem himself. What are these two trying to say about the private eye, versus the cops? The cops have it together, while the bloodthirsty private eye fumbles every single play.
Well, yeah, and I think there is something being said about it, but we might come back onto it when we talk about the ending. But I think one of the things they might be trying to say personally, and this is a personal reading of the film, is there's a line. Someone says a line about, what do we all worry about? Diamonds, rubies, and all this business, and how old hat it all is. And I think that's one of the things they're trying to say, that we've seen this before, we've done this before, and there are bigger things to worry about than a gumshoe on a case going on in the world. Yeah. I think that's what so it's almost a perfect vehicle then, if that's what they want to say. So we can tear down, we can take a book we loathe and a character we loathe and use him to say how dated this format is. and how insignificant and meaningless it all is in the wake of what's actually happening in the world. I think that's an understandable reading of this film and the intention behind it. And if that's what the intention is, I do think it works. But you're right. In terms of the actual character, Hammer has no redeeming qualities whatsoever, and he is the worst type of schoolyard bully. When he breaks that LP record in half, it's just petty spite in it, I sort of prefer is the wrong word, but the bit where he slams the doctor's hand in the drawer is much more to what I think Hammer is in the books.
Yes, that was a very.
I need information from you, and I don't care if I hurt you if I'm going to get it.
Yeah, that felt authentic Hammer to me. Yeah.
But breaking the record, I don't think it's just petty, innit? It's like so trivial, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. It was like, what are you doing? Why? I don't understand why you're being mean to this guy. You have no reason to be mean to this guy right now.
Absolutely, yeah. Isn't he just going to go and buy the record again? What have you achieved?
Yeah, and well, this is where I was foreshadowing this a bit earlier, but these were these moments where it's like I really throughout the film I just did not like Hammer at all. Like nothing about him did I like. From his very first conversation with Christina Bailey in the car to where she she sort of makes some comments about she sort of puts him in his place, really, because he makes a comment about women or men or something like that, and she goes on this sort of tirade about because a woman needs a man to be complete. Are you the big man who's going to complete me? That kind of she kind of puts him in his place, and I rather like that scene. And I was kind of like, okay, cool. I like the film's doing this, but actually in the end he is just that sleaze. He's sort of using and abusing his secretary. She loves him, and
she loves him. Yeah,
and she's being used to entrap the husbands of the wives who are coming to Hammer to prove whether they're having affairs or not. And even when his secretary was named Velma or Velda, even when she's kidnapped, I don't really feel like he cares that much.
No, I don't think he cares. He's only ever nice to her when he wants her to do something for him.
Exactly.
Either in terms of the story or who knows what behind closed doors.
Yeah.
But and he's totally unapologetic for it. There's a bit where he's hauled before the cops, isn't there? And there's like a tribunal of policemen and officials, and they say, he's hired by one party to find who they're sleeping with, find evidence of infidelity, and then he uses that to have a lever over the other party, who's hired him, so that he can play them both off each other. And I every time I watch this film, I think to myself, well, really, if you're gonna, I don't mind having an unpleasant character at the start, but you're gonna have to redeem him by the end if this is what he is.
Yeah. Yes. And this is what's confusing to me is because most of the time in the film he's a piece of shit, but then you have these weird moments where he's really friendly with Nick the mechanic, who's a foreigner, and then he goes to a bar and he's really friendly with the black barman, and he's friendly with the nightclub singer, who are both African Americans, and they know him and they seem to be like friends with him. So it's confusing to me because at one end he's being awful to everyone, but at the same time he's being he's not being mean or cruel or judgmental towards minorities. And it's almost like it doesn't compute with what this script is trying to do. I don't know what they're trying to say. Like, he hates everyone. He hates all like white Americans. It's confusing.
Yeah, it is confusing because you would expect Hammer to like white Americans and not minorities, wouldn't you?
given the way he's presented here, yeah, you'd think he'd be a racist piece of shit. But he's weirdly not. It's
weirdly not. Yeah, it's very strange. And there are some, albeit brief, moments where he does seem sort of shaken and not so much vulnerable, but starts to. You think he's going to start realizing what an ass he's been now, and do something about it. But he doesn't really. He doesn't really at all.
Nope. What do you think about Ralph Meeker? Yeah, what do you think about Ralph Meeker as Mike Hammer? Just the acting of him portraying this role.
That's a very difficult question for me to answer that, because I think for what he's given and what he's being asked to portray, I think he portrays very well, which is a stupid, moronic thug. But I think Ralph Meeker is actually better than this version of Mike Hammer allows him to be overall, because he does come across as a bit wooden in this.
Very.
Yeah. And I don't think he necessarily was. If you watch Ralph Meeker in other films, I don't think he necessarily was wooden. So, there is a sort of. I remember somebody once saying to me, criticizing Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Terminator, for acting like a robot, and somebody said, but he is a robot. Exactly. You can have John Gielgud play the robot, and he'd do it like that, sort of thing. Which So when you're being asked to play just a slab of meat who's got nothing between his ears, which is what Hammer comes across as predominantly in this film. I wonder, that's not a bad way of portraying him, but it doesn't quite work. It doesn't necessarily work so much when there's then a sudden shift. So he gets Lily to read him the Christina Rossetti poem as he tries to work out this cryptic message. Remember me, Christine from the girl at the beginning who sets the plot in motion has left him. And when she's reading it, you can just tell that he hasn't got a clue what is going on.
No.
Now that's either I could cut this both ways, Luke. I could say that is wooden acting, or I could say that's actually great acting of a thick, stupid man.
Yeah,
and I wonder if Ralph Meeker's double bluffing you, Luke, when we say he's wooden. But I don't think he's not the Mike Hammer that I picture when I read the books.
No, it's almost. Have you ever seen the show? Have you seen the new show Reacher on Amazon Prime?
Yeah, not all of it, but I've seen.
So that actor, Alan, was his name Alan Richardson or something like that. He, I've known of that actor for a very long time because he played Aquaman in Smallville, way back in 2004. And I watched him in Smallville as a kid a couple of times, and then he shows up in this in Reacher, and he is wooden and dull and lifeless. And I'm like, I've seen him be a kind of funny surfer dude bro playing young Aquaman. So it's like, I know he can act, and maybe that's what's going on with Ralph Meeker here.
Yeah, I think it is the more I think about it, because I do.
You'd be right.
I have seen Ralph Meeker in a number of other films, and he's not like this necessarily. So I do wonder if it is a choice. It's a artistic choice.
Yeah.
To present him as thick as you can get, as stupid as you can be, and that's what he's trying to convey, and it sort of comes across as wooden.
It does. Now, one character I just want to briefly mention, is not, don't want to hang on this one for too long, but it irritated the bejesus out of me though, was Nick the mechanic.
Vavavoom.
Like, you took it too far. You took it
absolutely
too far, man. Like, he is so over the top. He just doesn't shut up. and it feels like a caricature, and it just lost me. It just, I needed him to shut the f up. It was so annoying.
And it's strange, isn't it? Because Buzz, the screenwriter, was himself Greek. He was a Greek American.
Yes.
So you
the
think
actor was as well.
Yeah. Well, so you think they'd get it right, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, this is why it's weird. It's like they intentionally made it a caricature, and I don't understand why. It's so many whys.
It's one of those performances and characters where, for a bit of comic relief, I can handle him in one scene or two if they're brief. But as you say, when it's overdone, your hand sort of subconsciously reaches for the forward wind button on the remote control.
Yes,
I'll just wind over this bit. Don't need this.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't feel a great amount of sympathy. Spoilers ahead when Nick is killed.
No, I don't either. It's sad because it's like you could have, because this was kind of Mike Hammer's only friend.
This should be the impetus that makes him pull himself out of his sluggishness and do something.
Nope.
But doesn't he just go it just goes and gets wasted at a bar, doesn't he?
Yes. Yeah. It's like, all right,
and becomes, instead of, because the Mike Hammer of the book, so the very first Mike Hammer book starts with him saying his friend's been shot, if I remember rightly, and he says to the police, "I am going to get it's called I the Jury for a reason. I'm going to get these people, and I'm going to kill them. You just have to know that's going to happen."
Yeah.
This Mike Hammer goes and self pities for a couple of hours over a bottle of whatever it is, bourbon.
Yeah.
That is not Mike Hammer. That's not Mike Hammer.
No. So I was like, whatever.
Move on.
Yeah. But the other thing is, like, with this script as well is, and again, Buzz has already mentioned in his quotes that he wrote it in a hurry, is just throwing it together. And I'm not going to lie, there are moments where I struggle to follow what the F was going on.
It is.
When he visits the guy with the effed up, when he visits the guy with the effed up face a couple of times, I had to really strain to think, wait, who was this guy? What was his connection again? Oh, right, he contacted Velda. Velda checked. Oh, right, okay. It was it's very loose. Yeah,
absolutely. Why am I suddenly following Hammer through an art gallery?
Yes.
And
what
I had trouble with I can't even remember him now. Who he is now, but the bloke whose record he breaks.
I can't remember his connection
Trivago or something. Trivago, is it? I don't know what he's got to do. I'd have to watch it again to recall what he has got to do with anything, because they all seem to be people who lead him on to other people. Yeah. And then I think, well, you could cut one of them out, couldn't you?
Yes.
If A has got to speak to B to get to C, then surely A can just speak to C. You know what I mean? We don't need B in it, do we? Find another way. Find a quicker way.
Yeah,
There is a sense of a private eye following clues, but they're not clues really. They're just sort of people telling him to go from one place to another, which he, like a dog, does. Because he can't think for himself.
Yeah, in my notes, I wrote that the investigation feels snappy and it doesn't dilly-dally, and I feel that's accurate. I feel like it is constantly moving, even if you're confused as to why it's moving in a certain direction. But then I also wrote that there is just a thinness to it all, and that, coupled with Mike Hammer feeling a bit one-dimensional, makes it very, at times it makes it tough. But yeah, should we move on to the femme fatale, the real femme fatale of the piece? Because there's a couple of misdirected femme fatales.
There's some misdirected femme fatales.
Marian, like I said, Marian Carr, who plays Friday, a nymphomaniac who's there for one scene. Like, I have the Criterion Blu-ray of this, and there's a lovely little booklet inside, right? And on the back of the booklet, there's this picture of Mike Hammer surrounded by all the women. You got the same one. You got the same one.
Got the same one.
And looking at it, I looked at this picture. I was like, okay, there's Velda. Okay, yeah, there's Lily, and the other two. I'm like, were they even in this movie? Because I don't recognize them.
No, I don't actually. Now I'm looking at it.
Yeah,
I don't
recognize them.
Who's she? Who's the one? Well, one must be Christina.
I mean, maybe doesn't look like her, but maybe. You know, the tall blonde on his left might be Friday, but then the dark-haired woman who's on his shoulder, I don't know who. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, I think that's Christina who kicks it off. The point is there are only really 4 female roles in this, and we can't tell them apart.
Yes.
Apart from Velda, who is by far, I think, the most interested of all of them.
Yes.
I would have liked more of Friday, I have to say, because I thought she was a wasted opportunity, and I don't see why she couldn't be the Lily character that we're going to talk about in a minute. I don't see why she couldn't turn out to be the femme fatale. It would have been much more satisfying for me. Yeah,
she just comes on screen and then leaves, and that's it. You're like, oh, okay, cool. All right, see you later, lady.
She's a better actress. She's a better actress for one thing.
She is. So Lily, the character Lily, is played by Gaby Rodgers, and I don't know if I've seen Gaby Rodgers in anything else. I think this is the first time I've actually properly seen her in something. And
she's German, so I don't think we'll have seen her in anything.
From that opening scene with her where Hammer follows the trail to her apartment, which is, fine, a bit of interesting, back and forth. He follows the trail, finds her. She's used to be the roommate of Christina. I don't know. It was a bit sort of blah. She just sort of lies there looking sexy with her gun. But there's no, I don't know, just she lacked life. She lacked charisma. She lacked the things. And maybe, again, this is where this film is so complicated, because is that the point? Are they trying to make the femme fatale unsexy and gripping? Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It is a film of misdirection, I think. That you're not really sure what they're going for. I don't see the point. I don't see the artistic payoff of making your femme fatale not sexy, necessarily, or interesting. Yeah, and the minute she opens her mouth, I'm afraid she loses me, because she is really bland and wooden. And once you've you've already had Velda, who for my money is the best woman in it.
Yeah.
And then you've had Friday, and then you get Lily. She's coming on the back of like 2 much more interesting characters for me.
Yeah.
You've already had Christine.
We should mention Cloris Leachman, who plays Christina Bailey. I mean, that opening scene is a fantastic opening scene.
She
steals the opening. She
does.
Because I didn't know Mike Hammer was the person in the car with her at the very beginning, because I'm watching this for the first time, and my eyes were glued on her, and I was fascinated by what she was saying, what she was doing. I didn't care what Ralph Meeker was doing. She was the star on the screen there, and then
to be fair, Ralph Meeker's not. Yeah, to be fair, Ralph Meeker's not doing much, is he?
No,
he's just driving the car. But she is, it's a sort of one scene character, and she absolutely dominates it. And she's a lot of things in that scene. She is frantic in the opening seconds. Then she is grateful. Then she's frightened. Then she's when she sees the sort of roadblock. Then she's quite wily when she realizes that if she just covers up the blanket, she might. And holds his hand, she could pass for a sleeping wife, which is what he picks up on amazingly, because Hammer's normally so stupid, but he picks up on that. And then she is quite alluring when she's talking about the Rossetti poem, and then she goes back to being frightened and says, "If I hope to meet you again, and if we don't remember me."
Yes.
it's a great opening, and she owns it. She's got almost all the lines in it, and she owns it. And whether it's her or not, or whether it's a voice actress, I don't know. But the torture scene with her is chilling.
Yes,
and the vocals that accompany it, and even the acting with just like from her knees down. It's not easy to do. It's really good.
Yes.
So she is. So you've had her, then you get Velda, and then you get Friday, and then you get Lily. For goodness' sake, who's just a slab of 2x4, isn't she?
Yeah, she's just sort of there. She's just sort of moping around a little bit. And I guess with your femme fatale, you want to see them involved. You want to see them being manipulative, being suspect, being alluring, something. And she was just sort of sitting around in his apartment. And you're like, oh,
yeah, because
okay.
Why would Hammer care? The whole point about, one of the points about a femme fatale for me is that the main character is instantly like smitten or trapped or whatever other verb you want to use that means she's got his claws into him.
Yeah.
Why would Hammer care about this woman?
He's already got Velda, so
he's got Velda, and if he drives back to Avilo's house, the gangster's house, he can have Friday.
Exactly.
What does he care about her? I say these things with Mike Hammer's mindset, of course.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, given what we know about him, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, he's not after any of these for their sort of sparkling personalities and after dinner conversation, obviously.
No, he's not.
On whichever plane you want to talk about them, Lily Carver is the bottom of the pile for me, and I don't see why he cares. And if your protagonist in a noir film doesn't care about the femme fatale, where do you go from there?
Yeah, well, exactly. But also, I don't quite follow her connection to the mysterious box. So, for context, if you've not watched the movie, spoilers, obviously, but Mike follows Secluse to a locker in like a YMCA kind of building. And in this locker is a box now that once he opens it has a blinding light that shoots out and burns his skin. Think clearly this is I feel like Pulp Fiction must have taken from this because
absolutely
they must have done. I've not read it anywhere, but I'm like, how could Tarantino must have taken that idea from this?
Yeah, I think that's accepted, as is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I was going to say Raiders as well. Yep.
In fact, I think I'm right in saying that the shot of Belloc when the Ark is opened is taken from this film.
I thought the same thing. Yep. Yeah. So you basically find out when Hammer opens his box, I'm like, wait a minute, this is like a box of like nuclear stuff. It's like The Simpsons, where like in the opening credits, where there's that like little bar of plutonium or whatever that goes bouncing around, that irradiated metal bar in the opening credits, and you're like, it's just kind of bouncing. And it's like, is that what's inside this box? Like, what is inside this? What's in the box? Which they say in the movie, and it made me think of Seven.
Is that Seven?
I was like,
is that Seven?
What's in the box? And so basically everything has been in the book. It's all about a bunch of cash, I believe, but here it's everything.
It's drugs, isn't it? Is it cash?
Yeah,
and drugs?
Yeah. And here it's all about this magical portable A-bomb.
Well, yeah, because should we get into the ending then?
Let's get into it. Yeah.
What the scene I talked about earlier, where he says, "I'm going to give you some words. These are just letters in order. You have to make sense of them." He says, "The Manhattan Project," which was a real thing, and it was the first attempt by the Americans to make nuclear weapons. Yeah, essentially. So you're not specifically told what it is, are you? You are shown very graphically what it does, but you're not told what it is. And I think it's fair to say this is an ending that most people would say you either love it or you hate it. it offers no explanation.
No, it's a bit like Mission Impossible 3, which is all about looking for the rabbit's foot, but you don't actually know what the rabbit's foot does or is.
Yeah, this box is the MacGuffin, almost the MacGuffin to end all MacGuffins.
Yeah.
But I think this is going back to what I said before, but about the intentions of Altman and Buzz to be that there are worse things happening than we could ever show you on film, essentially. There are bigger things to worry about than a private eye on a case. Because this is, and it's right in the era, isn't it? This is about nuclear weapons.
Yes. Well, we're height of Cold War.
Yeah.
It's the height of the Cold War. Nuclear holocaust is on everyone's mind. Space race is kicking off. It's that is what's happening socially at this time.
And I think it's a way. Of because I think I'm right in saying that the narcotics plot was booted out by the studios and said we're not doing that. And this was his answer. Okay, well, we'll just blow up the world then.
Yes.
I can't do a story about drugs in a suitcase. I'll just blow up the world.
Yeah.
But it clearly is relevant to the time that this film is made, and people.
It is a bit. I
said this was bleak. I think this is actually a paranoid film. I think this is a film about paranoia, and it comes out of paranoia. Paranoia about what people were experimenting with. Paranoia about communism. Paranoia about everything, and it's a very wound up film.
Yes,
that doesn't let itself solve any of its problems and just gets more and more wound up at the end.
Yes, I think that's probably one of my problems is I wish it just had a bit more focus. But again, as we know from both the writer and the director, they didn't care about any of it and they just rushed through it. So again, it's like if you want to, it's like, why did you do that? Why did you take this job?
Yeah, well, quite. Why did you take the job? That was a question that occurred to me earlier. The director maybe is tied in, but the writer could say, "I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
I'm not adapting that."
Yeah,
and go off and do something else.
Yeah. So I guess we could talk about the actual ending, and Velda gets kidnapped.
Yeah,
by someone.
By someone. But
I don't remember who.
It just sort of happens, doesn't it?
Yes,
just sort
it's
of happens.
After Nick dies. He finds out that Velda's some guy comes into the bar and tells the bartender, "I've got Velda. Tell Hammer." I don't know why the guy doesn't tell Hammer, but whatever.
But we don't know who it is, do we? Because it's not the two main henchmen. Because Hammer kills them.
Yeah, it's not them. I don't know who it is. I don't know. It's the doctor. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, he follows some last minute clues to a beach house somewhere and assumes that that's just where she might possibly be. And when he arrives, we find Lily Carver is there with Dr. Sobran, who was connected to Christina at the very beginning when she was essentially being held hostage in an insane asylum, which she broke out of. And when she broke out, that's when she ran into Hammer and started all this stuff.
And he's also he prescribes sleeping pills to the art gallery owner, whose relevance escapes me, but he tries to overdose on the sleeping pills.
Yes.
All this happens in the last sort of 15 minutes. So
it's nuts.
The build,
it's absolutely nuts.
It's a rapid descent into the closing credits.
Yeah. And so basically the big reveal and they are in possession of the box which Hammer had found but then was stolen. And you're like, all right, okay. The problem is it's like no one knows what's in the box, which makes it quite frustrating because, well, Dr. Sobran knows what's in the box, but Christina, but Lily Carver, her name then changes to Gabriella, doesn't know what's in the box. And Sobran's like, don't open the box, whatever you do. And it's that frustrating screenwriting stuff where you're just withholding information for drama sake. Tell her don't open it because it's a effing atomic bomb.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, there's an obvious answer to this, isn't there? And that is that it is. He mentions Pandora's box.
Yes.
He says you like Pandora, and then for some reason starts saying she's like Lot's wife, which seems a bit of a tangent, but.
Well, and also that one doesn't make sense though. Lot's wife doesn't make sense because that's the story where they're leaving Sodom and Gomorrah and they turn around and she turns to
She's
pillar of salt.
Yeah,
but that has nothing to do with.
No, I would have stuck with Pandora's Box, which is a much more direct reference. But this happens all the time. So you get like biblical references, you get Greek myths, you get modern pop culture references all thrown in together. And it just becomes a bit of a sort of juxtaposition of a lot of different ideas and thoughts. But anyway, Pandora's Box. The obvious interpretation, isn't it, is that she opens it and unleashes the horrors of the world again. And in this day,
Hammer comes in, he kills him and the doctor
power.
Into a fight. The doctor gets shot, he dies, but then Hammer gets shot.
Hammer gets shot, yeah.
Before she opens the box, Hammer gets shot. No, it's weird.
At one point, he's like,
no, he gets shot and he falls down. I'm like, well, he's got to be dead then. He looks like he's dead. Is he going to stop her somehow? And he's lying there on the floor. And at this point, he still hasn't even found Velda. He doesn't know where she is. Doesn't know she's in the house. And then that's when
this is really frustrating to me. This is really frustrating to me. Velda. It's Velda.
Velda. It's Velma in the book, but Velda in the movie for some reason.
Yeah. That's where the mistake comes from. She is in the house and she's behind a locked door that he can open with ease. But she only starts shouting after the box has been opened and he starts shouting her name.
Yeah.
So why is she not shouting all the time?
Yeah.
It's not as if he comes in quietly.
Nope.
He's shouting her name from the minute he walks in. So why doesn't she bang on the door?
Yeah.
Then, that's that. I find that, I know it's a small point, it's a petty point perhaps, but I find that really frustrating.
No, I did too. Yeah. It's annoying
because it's not what she would do. Stay quiet. She would be bawling her lungs out.
Yeah.
But then, he falls down, and then because we're so concentrated on what's happening behind him, we're sort of almost overlook the fact that he just gets up again and starts moving around. Even though he's been presumably shot in the gut. I don't know, but
he looks like he gets shot in the gut. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and the gun is pointed straight at him. It's not that she's a bad shot or anything.
No, he's like right in front of miss.
Yeah, she can't miss. And then they run out onto the beach and the beach house.
Well, you're burying the lead. I mean, what's happening during all this stuff is she opens the box, and that's when you get your Raiders of the Lost Ark moment, where she just opens the box and she's washed over with this blinding, burning light, and then the whole room just envelops in flames and she starts burning. And there's the rest of the scene is sort of as things start burning and blowing up, there is this sort of almost like hellish haunting scream that never ends.
Very David Lynchy. And and I think Lynch has come out and said that he was directly influenced by this film in some of the films that he's made.
I can believe that.
And I think it is a really striking ending.
It is.
And it really does leave you wide-eyed and open-mouthed saying, what? It really is.
The film descends into science fiction for me, and that's where I'm like, this is a weird collision of genres. It's espionage, it's a little bit noir, and then it ends as science fiction. Because I'm like,
now I don't know why this film didn't invoke in me that violent reaction that Sugar did, and I can't explain why that is, and I think it's possibly because, I can accept. Well, I know that nuclear power and nuclear weapons exist, but I'm not so sure about aliens. And having my main PI character that I've grown to like turn out to be an alien felt like a cheat. This doesn't necessarily feel like a cheat to me, but it's one of those endings where after it, you think, hang on, what? While I'm wrapped up in the moment, I can go along with it. But when the credits have rolled, I think,
no,
really,
not for me. The minute Hammer opens,
this is box, your Sugar.
Yeah, except Sugar's actually good. And I can't tell if it's it or not. The minute Hammer opens the box in the gym from in the locker and he gets burnt, I'm like, did he just get burnt with like nuclear stuff? Like he must be like contagious now. Like this isn't.
Yeah,
what?
I think
what?
I think that's a mistake. I think that's a. I don't mean a mistake that they've overlooked. I think it's a mistake to have that scene included.
Yes.
I think he should just. It gives it away. It gives it away too early.
Yeah, I knew exactly what it was the minute he did that. The minute the bright light opened in this box, I was like, oh my God, this is a portable like nuclear weapon, and that is so dumb.
Yeah, this is a bomb. Yeah.
So dumb.
By comparison,
for me, that pulled me. That what was left was that. Now that threw me out the rest of the way. Like I was already sort of my head was just sort of peering in, and I'm like, now I'm out the building. I'm out the building now.
By comparison, I suppose a box full of cash and drugs is a bit prosaic. Maybe they thought, well, we'll have to up the ante. I don't know. But there is an alternate. There was an alternate ending for a long time. I say an alternate ending. I think it was butchered, and it was never intended to be the ending. And Aldrich has gone down on the record as saying there was only ever one ending, and that's the one that we now have, where they escape. Hammer and Velda escape. But originally, it was cut. Them escaping was cut. So you go from him getting out of the room and getting Velda, and Lily / Gabrielle going up in flames. Then it cuts to the explosion of the beach house.
Yeah.
The implication being that they're all dead. Which, if you're going to make a film about the threat of nuclear war, is a pretty big full stop to your story, isn't it? And to the message that you're sending. I don't know whether does that work better if that's what they're intending to do. I don't know. I mean, I could be convinced either way on that.
Once Hammer got shot, I was like, you know what? Let him die.
Yes.
I don't like him anyway. I don't like him. He's effed up the entire investigation. He's a complete screw up. He's a dummy. I'm trying very hard not to curse right now because he's so freaking annoying. Like he just irritates him. So I was like, yes, let him die. He should die in this mess that he created because he is a dipshit. I just can't. He deserved. Velda did not deserve to die, but he deserved it. Like she just should have got out and left.
Well, just hold that thought. I just hold that thought. Because I'm starting to think what it might be a better ending with the cut, so you don't see them escape, because then you would have the nasty side of humanity, and for want of a better word, the decent side of humanity. So you've got Hammer and Lily, and Velda, all dying together, which essentially is what a nuclear war. We'd all be equal, wouldn't we? So I'm starting to come around to the idea that keeping that cut in is a better ending. I don't know what people make of that, but let us know in the comments, because it works both ways for me. I don't hate this ending as much as you do. It works both ways for me.
Let me caveat that. I don't hate the ending per se. I don't mind this ending of there's a bomb and Lily triggers the bomb and she dies and Hammer's been shot and he might be dying. I don't mind the concept of the ending. What I hate is the stupid science fiction portable atomic bomb in a wooden box.
Yeah. So if it was a ticking bomb, if it was dynamite,
something.
Yeah, because it's. You could argue it's been foreshadowed, couldn't you? Because how many bombs does Hammer get taken off his car? It seems to be happening every 2 minutes.
Yes.
So
yes,
the fact they use explosives, could be a payoff if it was just a normal bomb in inverted commas, in the box at the end. But all right. That caveat taken on board, whether they escape or not, I'd be happy with either of those.
Same. Yeah, same.
But I do think, given that there is the nuclear element in it, I think the better ending to this film is that It doesn't matter what you are as a person. If this stuff gets out, it's not going to discriminate between thuggish Mike Hammer and poor put upon Velda. The total ambiguity of it, which, you know, it's fascinating to learn, it comes out of complete antipathy to the source material, you know, and a total disregard for it. You know, that's a fascinating turn of events, really. But I do like the ambiguity of this film, and I do like the uncompromising nature of it, and the crazy ending, because it is a crazy ending.
Yes, it is nuts. It is. You know, it shocked me for sure, but it is. You know, it's an interesting film. I think it's. I feel like the behind the scenes are maybe more interesting than the film itself. I from like a David Lynch perspective, I get why people are into it, because there's so many weird things, odd things happening, and weirdly horrific things happening that you don't see as much. You know, the burning scene at the end is probably the most horrific thing that you actually see in the movie. You know, it's just a complicated film, because it's a very cynical film made by two people who didn't like the author, didn't like the character, didn't like the book, changed loads of it around to tell a weird atomic bomb threat story about a dumb private eye.
Yeah, and it does come out of nowhere. I think if you sat people down and said, who hadn't seen the film, and said, right, we're going to pause it just before the end. We want you all to write down what you think is in this box. Nobody is going to write nuclear waste. Nobody's going to write it. You know, that is some real sort of left field thinking in it.
Yep.
Most people would say money.
Yeah. Money, drugs, blackmail material, something.
Blackmail material. Yeah. You know, most people would do
something like that. That all sort of makes sense.
Yeah, but again, you know, I have to give it points for just doing something, no matter how out of the way, doing something different.
I mean, but I guess. I mean, I'm gonna stop harping on about this, but like, it's a wooden box with a leather covering. Like, there is no way that's not leaking radiation and killing lots of people who are passing by it. You know, like, aren't being poisoned by radiation.
Yeah.
Like,
so Hammer's been exposed to it, hasn't he?
Twice.
So the fact he escapes and falls in the ocean. So he's contaminated the ocean, presumably. You know, he's contaminated Velda. You know, there's all sorts of repercussions of their survival that I don't think Aldrich may have taken on board. No,
that dude would have been in a hospital bed in about 4 weeks' time.
Yeah,
dying.
Yeah,
you know, like it's an odd one. It's an odd one. But I think we have thoroughly investigated Kiss Me Deadly. I
do as well, as far as we can, because it's not a film that's easy to nail down. I don't think, as I hope we've suggested.
Yes, so we should probably rate this sucker. So. As we do, the first rating of 2025. We rate all of our films out of 5 Falcons, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Start with you, Matt. How many Falcons are you going to give Kiss Me Deadly?
I'm going to give, because I do enjoy it. I like it as a noir. I like it as an Aldrich film, and as I said, I like a lot of Aldrich's films. I do like the ending, but Mike Hammer is dumb, and there's some pretty ropey acting in it, particularly from a female lead who should have been much better than she is. So for that, I want to give it a 4. I already know I'm going to be like streets away from you, but I want to give this a 4 because I want to like it, and I want it to succeed, but it doesn't quite. So I am gonna be harsher than I would normally be, and I'm gonna give it a 3.5.
All right, fair enough. I think I just realized what this film is. It is the film noir equivalent of The Last Jedi. It subverts all your expectations of the character and the source material, and just screws it all up because the writer director doesn't care. And
wow.
and quite interestingly, I find that the most interesting aspect of this whole movie. So maybe in 70 years, people will look back at The Last Jedi and be like, actually, this is pretty interesting.
I shouldn't think so.
But yeah, this is a really tough one because, like I said at the beginning, I'm torn between do I love it and do I hate it? And I think that love-hate comes from the creatives involved because they loved filmmaking, but they hated this project. And I think that comes off strongly in this piece. And I feel like I need to give them credit because I do think they are trying to make some sort of commentary on this Spillane being a very conservative, right-winged, commie hunting wackadoo, and taking his character and just bastardizing him and emasculating him and essentially killing him. I don't, he was shot in the gut. He's been around radiation. Hammer's going to die as a result of this film. Even if we don't see it, he's going to die. So they essentially kill him in this, which is interesting, kind of, in the way that Rian Johnson killed Luke Skywalker. it's you know what I mean? It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So it's that aspect I'm really quite taken by. And like I said, there are really good moments in this. The ending scene when Lily is being burnt alive, it's horrific and it's scary. It's otherworldly. It's like being in Hades. It's terrifying. The opening scene is fantastic. Some of the fight scenes are great. The scene where Hammer is being followed by someone and he's sort of using his surroundings to sort of check and see what, there's really, really cool moments in here. And I like the use of the Nat King Cole song as well. It's just, it's so frustrating. So I think I think I'm going to give it 3. I think I'm going to give this 3 Falcons because without knowing any of the background, I might have been really harsh and gave this 1 Falcon.
Wow.
Seriously,
that would have been harsh
because it is poorly constructed. The plot is senseless. The structure is terrible. You don't know where you're going, why you're going. Characters come in and out and they have no purpose. There's a lot of poor elements in this movie. And you get that from the writer. The writer says, I wrote it in a hurry. I didn't like it. I didn't want to, so, but there's something that sort of transcends this mess and this thing that they hated that makes it compelling and interesting at the same time. So yeah, so for that, it's a 3 for me. So 3.5 for you and a 3 for me. A very bizarre first film of 2025.
Yeah, an interesting one to kick us off in the new year. I do get the impression that I think it might be hoodwinking a lot of people.
I think so.
But you might ask yourself, what's the point of that then? If I don't know what a film is trying to achieve, what's the point?
Yes.
But no one said cinema should be easy.
No. And hey, if you're talking about it,
Well, that's right. We've been talking about it for a while, even on this episode, and people have been talking about it for whatever it is, 70 years.
Yeah, but so it's got something. It's got something. It's worth watching. I mean, it's just as frustrated as I've been with this movie, I would still tell people watch it. Yeah, it's fascinating.
I definitely would, and I will always say, that I would rather a piece of art, whatever it is, book, film, song, whatever it is divisive, because at least it's got a reaction of some sort. It's not if something is so bland you don't have a feeling about it one way or the other, then I find that really frustrating. And I think, what's the point of that then?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
If two people can sit and, not that we vastly disagree, but if two people can sit and disagree about a film, then I think it has achieved something. I think it's provoked a reaction and an emotion, which is all you can ask cinema to do sometimes. I think that's, much rather it be divisive than nothing.
I have to agree. But I guess we'll hand it over to the listeners. Let us know what you think of Kiss Me Deadly. Comment on YouTube. Find us on social media. Let us know. We would love to hear your thoughts on Kiss Me Deadly. Well, that wraps up our investigation. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another case. In the meantime, please like and subscribe, and be sure to take care walking down those mean streets.